The summer heat in South Africa was strong that year. It was 2019, and the small town of Mopani sat quiet under the burning sun. The people there lived simple lives. They farmed. They worked. They told stories around fires at night. Most of them had never seen anything strange in the sky. Most of them believed the world worked in ways they understood. Thabo Ndlovu was 12 years old. He was a thin boy with bright eyes and a curious mind. He asked too many questions. His mother always said this. His teachers said it too. But his uncle, a man named Solomon, loved this about him. Solomon was a park ranger in the Kruger National Park. He knew the bush better than anyone. He knew the animals. He knew the plants. He knew the sounds of the night. That weekend, Solomon took Thabo camping. It was something they did every few months. They would drive deep into the bushveld, far from the town, far from the noise of people. They would set up a small tent near a dry riverbed and spend 2 days watching animals, cooking over a fire, and talking about life. Thabo loved these trips more than anything. The bush made him feel alive. He loved the smell of the dry grass. He loved the sound of birds calling in the morning. He loved the way the stars looked at night, so many of them that the sky seemed white instead of black. On this trip, everything started normal. They arrived in the afternoon. Solomon showed Thabo how to set up the tent properly. They collected wood for the fire. They cooked meat and maize over the flames as the sun went down. Solomon told stories about lions he had seen and elephants that had charged at him. Thabo listened with wide eyes. By 9 o'clock, the fire was low. The bush was quiet. Solomon said it was time to sleep. But Thabo was not tired. He wanted to sit outside a little longer. He wanted to watch the stars. Solomon agreed, but told him not to wander far. Then he went into the tent and lay down, sat on a flat rock near the fire. He looked up at the sky. The moon was half full, hanging like a bright coin above the trees. The stars were scattered everywhere, more than he could ever count. He felt small but not scared. He felt like he was part of something big. Then he saw a dot at first. He thought it was a shooting star. A bright light moved across the sky, fast and silent. But then it stopped. It just stopped in the middle of the sky, hanging there like it was waiting for something. Thabo sat up straight. His heart began to beat faster. The light started to grow. It got bigger and brighter. It was coming down. Thabo wanted to call for his uncle, but his voice was stuck in his throat. He could not make a sound. He could only watch. The light came down slowly, like a feather falling through water. It made no noise at all. This was the strangest part. Everything in the bush makes noise. Birds, insects, wind. But this thing was completely silent. It landed about 200 meters away, behind a group of acacia trees. The light faded, but Thabo could still see a shape there. It was large. It was smooth. It did not look like any plane or helicopter he had ever seen. It looked like something from a dream or a nightmare. Thabo stood up. His legs were shaking. He knew he should wake his uncle. He knew he should run. But something held him there. Something made him want to see more. Then the figures appeared. They came from the direction of the strange shape. There were 3 of them. They were tall, much taller than any person Thabo had ever seen. They moved smoothly, like they were gliding instead of walking. Their bodies were thin and long. Their skin looked strange in the moonlight, like it was made of something shiny, something not quite human. Thabo grabbed his flashlight and held it tight. His hands were sweating. His breath was fast and shallow. He wanted to run, but his feet would not move. It was like the ground was holding him in place. The figures came closer. They walked in a straight line, one behind the other. They did not speak. They did not make any sound at all. But they were looking at him. Thabo could feel their eyes on him. even though he could not see their faces clearly. He thought about his mother. He thought about his friends at school. He thought about all the things he had not done yet. He was only 12. He was not ready for this. He was not ready for anything like this. The figures stopped about 50 meters away. One of them raised what might have been an arm. A low sound filled the air. It was not loud, but Thabo could feel it in his chest. It made his whole body feel heavy. His legs gave out, and he fell to his knees. He tried to call for Solomon. He tried to scream, but nothing came out. His voice was gone. His strength was gone. He could only kneel there on the dry ground, watching the figures come closer. This was when Thabo noticed something else. Something small was moving in the bush to his left. At first, he thought it was a mongoose or a small cat. But then he saw the shape more clearly. It was low to the ground, with thick fur and a wide body. It moved with purpose, like it knew exactly what it was doing. It was a honey badger. Thabo had seen honey badgers before. Solomon had told him about them many times. They were small animals, not much bigger than a house cat. But they were famous for being the most fearless creatures in Africa. They fought lions. They fought snakes. They fought anything that got in their way. Solomon always said that if he could come back as any animal, he would choose a honey badger, because honey badgers were afraid of nothing. The honey badger stopped at the edge of the clearing. It looked at Thabo. Then it looked at the figures. It did not run. It did not hide. It just stood there, watching, like it was thinking about what to do next. The figures kept coming. They were 40 meters away now. 30, 25. Thabo closed his eyes. He did not know what was going to happen. He did not know if he would ever see his mother again. All he could do was wait. But the honey badger was not waiting. The honey badger was getting ready. The night had become something Thabo did not understand. The world he knew, the world of school and home and his mother's cooking, felt very far away. Here, in this clearing in the bush, something impossible was happening. 3 tall figures were walking toward him, and he could not move. He could not speak. He could not even breathe properly. The low hum in the air was getting stronger. It pressed against Thabo's chest like a heavy hand. His knees hurt from kneeling on the hard ground, but he could not stand up. His body was not listening to him anymore. It was like he was trapped inside himself, watching everything happen but unable to do anything about it. The figures were close now. Close enough that Thabo could see more details. Their bodies were very thin, almost like sticks covered in smooth skin. Their arms were long and hung down past their knees. Their heads were shaped differently than human heads, wider at the top and narrow at the bottom. And their skin had a strange shine to it, like metal or wet stone. Thabo had never believed in aliens. He had seen movies about them, sure. He had heard stories from older kids at school, but he had always thought those were just made up. Things to scare people. Things that were not real. Now he was not so sure. The figure in front raised its arm again. The hum got louder. Thabo felt like he was going to pass out. His vision was getting blurry at the edges. He thought this was the end. He thought these things, whatever they were going to take him away. He would never see his family again. He would never grow up. He would just disappear into the night like he had never existed. Then he heard the growl. It was a strange sound, rough and deep and angry. It came from somewhere to his left, from the direction of the bush where he had seen the small animal moving. Thabo turned his head slowly, using all the strength he had left. The honey badger was standing at the edge of the clearing. It was not hiding anymore. It had come out into the open, and it was facing the 3 figures with a look that Thabo would never forget. The animal's fur was standing up. Its teeth were showing. Its small eyes were fixed on the tall beings like they were the enemy. The figures stopped. All 3 of them stopped at the same time. like someone had pressed a pause button. They turned their heads toward the honey badger. The hum in the air changed. It got softer, like the figures were confused. Thebo could not believe what he was seeing. This small animal, no bigger than a medium-sized dog, was standing between him and these impossible creatures. It was not running away. It was not hiding. It was challenging them. The honey badger growled again. This time, the sound was louder. It echoed across the clearing. The animal took a step forward, then another. It was walking toward the figures, walking toward danger, walking toward things that were bigger and stranger and more powerful than anything it had ever faced. Thebo had heard many stories about honey badgers from his uncle. Solomon had told him that these animals were called radels in Afrikaans. He had said they were the most fearless animals in all of Africa. They would fight anything: lions, leopards, hyenas, snakes. It did not matter how big the enemy was. If a honey badger decided to fight, it would fight until it won or until it died. But this was different. This was not a lion or a snake. These were things from another world. Things that should not exist. How could a small animal understand what it was facing? The answer, Thabo realized, was that the honey badger did not care. It did not think about whether it could win. It did not calculate the odds. It just saw a threat, and it responded the only way it knew how: with anger, with courage, with a complete refusal to back down. The figure in front lowered its arm. The hum dropped even more. Thabo felt some strength return to his body. Not much, but enough to move his fingers. Enough to feel his heart beating again. The honey badger was now halfway between Thabo and the figures. It stopped there and planted its feet firmly on the ground. Its body was low, ready to attack. Its growl was constant now, a steady rumble of warning. The three figures looked at each other. At least, Thabo thought they did. It was hard to tell because their faces were not like human faces. But something passed between them. Some kind of communication that did not use words. Then the figure on the left moved. It took a step toward the honey badger, raising one of its long arms. Maybe it was curious. Maybe it thought this small creature was not a real threat. Maybe it had never seen anything like this before. The honey badger did not wait to find out what the figure wanted. It attacked. The animal launched itself forward with a speed that seemed impossible for its size. It covered the distance in less than a second. Its claws came out, sharp and curved, and it slashed at the figure's leg. The figure made a sound. It was not a scream exactly, but something like it. A high-pitched noise that hurt Tubbo's ears. The figure stumbled backward, and the honey badger pressed its attack. It bit down on something, twisted its body, and pulled. The other two figures moved quickly. They spread out, trying to surround the animal. But the honey badger was too fast. It spun around and faced them both, growling louder than ever. Its eyes were wild. Its body was tense. It was ready to fight all three of them at the same time. Thabo watched in amazement. He had never seen anything like this. A tiny animal fighting creatures from another world. And it was not losing. It was holding its ground. The hum in the air was almost gone now. Thabo found that he could move his arms. He could feel his legs again. Whatever power the figures had been using on him, it was fading. They were distracted. They were focused on the honey badger. Thabo knew this was his chance. He knew he should run. He should get to his uncle. He should escape while the figures were busy. But he could not look away. He could not leave this brave little animal to fight alone. The honey badger attacked again. It went for the middle figure this time, aiming for the legs. The figure tried to move away, but the animal was too quick. It made contact, and another strange sound filled the air. Thabo realized something important in that moment. These figures, whatever they were, had expected everything to be easy. They had expected no resistance. They had not planned for this. They had not planned for a creature that would rather die than give up. The standoff continued. 3 tall beings from somewhere beyond the stars, and 1 small animal that refused to be afraid. It was the strangest thing Thebo had ever seen, and somehow it was also the most beautiful. The honey badger growled again, and Thebo felt something change inside himself. If this small creature could be so brave, then maybe he could be brave too. Maybe he could find the strength to move. Maybe he could find the courage to run. He just needed to wait for the right moment. And the honey badger was giving him that moment, 1 attack at a time. The clearing had become a battlefield. On one side stood 3 beings from a world that Thebo could not imagine. On the other side was a honey badger that weighed no more than 11 kilograms. By all logic, by all reason, this fight should have been over in seconds. The small animal should have been defeated. It should have run away. It should have done what most creatures do when they face something bigger and stronger than themselves. But honey badgers do not follow the rules that other animals follow. They have their own rules. And the main rule is simple. Never give up. Never back down. Never let fear win. The figure that had been attacked first was still making strange sounds. It was holding its leg where the honey badger had bitten it. Something dark was leaking from the wound. Thebo did not know if it was blood or something else. He did not want to know. The other 2 figures were circling now. They moved in opposite directions, trying to get on both sides of the honey badger. They were being more careful than before. They had learned that this small animal was not to be taken lightly. The honey badger stood in the center, turning its head back and forth to watch both figures at the same time. Its growl never stopped. It was like a motor running inside its chest. A warning sound that said, "Come closer, and I will hurt you," in a language that needed no words. Thebo was still on his knees, but he felt stronger now. The heavy feeling in his body was almost gone. He could think clearly again. He knew he needed to run. He knew this was his chance. But he also knew that if he moved too quickly, the figures might notice him. They might stop watching the honey badger and turn their attention back to him. So he waited. He watched, and he saw something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. The figure on the left made its move. It rushed forward, reaching down with both of its long arms to grab the honey badger. It was fast, faster than anything that Sci should be. But the honey badger was faster. The animal ducked under the reaching arms and attacked the figure's legs with its claws. Then it actually jumped, and bit down on the figure's arm. The figure shook its arm wildly, trying to throw the animal off. But honey badgers have a special trick. Their skin is loose and tough. When something grabs them, they can turn around inside their own skin and bite whatever is holding them. The figure found this out the hard way. It was holding the honey badger's back, but the animal twisted around and sank its teeth into the figure's hand. Another strange sound filled the air. The figure let go and stumbled backward. The honey badger landed on its feet and immediately turned to face the third figure. It did not rest. It did not hesitate. It was ready for more. Thebo could not believe what he was seeing. This tiny animal was fighting like a warrior. It was fighting like it had been born for this moment. Every move was quick and precise. Every attack found its target. The honey badger was not just brave. It was smart. It was fighting with a plan. The 3 figures gathered together. They were not attacking anymore. They were standing in a group, watching the honey badger with what might have been surprise, or respect, or fear. Thebo could not tell which thought the honey badger walked toward them. Just walked, calm and steady, like it was taking a stroll through the bush. It stopped a few meters away and growled again. The sound was like a challenge. It was saying, "I am still here. I am not running. What are you going to do about it? The figures did not move. They just stood there, and Thabo realized something important. They were scared. These beings, who had come from somewhere beyond the sky, who had machines that could fly and powers that could freeze a boy in place, they were scared of a honey badger god. It made no sense. But then again, nothing about this night made sense. The honey badger took another step forward. The figures took a step back. All three of them, at the same time, moving away from this small creature that refused to give up. Thabo saw his chance. The figures were focused completely on the honey badger now. They had forgotten about him. They were too busy dealing with this impossible animal that kept attacking them. Slowly, carefully, Thabo got to his feet. His legs were shaky, but they held him up. He took a step backward toward the tent where his uncle was sleeping. Then another step. Then another. The honey badger seemed to understand what was happening. It growled louder and made a sudden movement toward the figures. They stepped back again, their attention completely on the animal. Thabo kept moving. He was 10 meters from the tent now, then 5. Then he was there, at the entrance, reaching for the zipper. He looked back one more time. The honey badger was still facing the figures, still growling, still daring them to come closer. In the moonlight, its fur looked silver. Its eyes looked like small fires. Thabo understood something in that moment. This animal was protecting him. It did not know him. It had no reason to care about him. But it was standing between him and danger anyway. It was giving him time to escape. He wanted to help the honey badger. He wanted to do something to thank it. But he was just a 12-year-old boy. He had no weapons. He had no powers. All he could do was what the honey badger was giving him the chance to do. He could run. Thabo unzipped the tent and pushed his way inside. His uncle was lying on his sleeping bag, snoring softly. Thabo grabbed his shoulder and shook him hard. "Uncle Solomon! Wake up. Wake up now." Solomon opened his eyes slowly. He looked confused. "Thabo, what is wrong? Why are you—" "There is something outside. Something bad. We have to go. We have to go right now." Solomon must have heard the fear in Thabo's voice. He stopped asking questions and started moving. He grabbed his keys and his phone. He did not even put on his shoes. He just followed Thabo out of the tent dot when they came outside. Thabo looked toward the clearing. The figures were still there. The honey badger was still there. But something had changed. The figures were moving backward, toward where their strange machine had landed. They were retreating. The honey badger followed them, step by step, growl by growl. It was chasing them away. Solomon grabbed Thabo's arm. "What are those things? What is happening?" Thabo did not answer. He just pulled his uncle toward the truck. They needed to leave. They needed to get away from here before the figures changed their minds. Before they decided that a boy was more important than escaping from a honey badger, they ran to the truck. Solomon started the engine. The headlights came on, flooding the clearing with light, and in that light, Thabo saw the honey badger one more time. It was standing alone in the middle of the clearing, watching the figures disappear into the darkness. It had won. Somehow, impossibly, it had won. The truck began to move. Thabo pressed his face against the window, watching until the clearing disappeared behind them. His heart was still pounding. His hands were still shaking. But he was alive. He was safe, because a honey badger had decided to fight for him. The truck bounced over the rough dirt road as Solomon drove faster than he should have in the darkness. Thabo sat in the passenger seat, his body still trembling. He could not stop thinking about what he had seen. The lights, the figures, the honey badger. It all felt like a dream, but he knew it was real. He had felt the hum in his chest. He had seen the figures walking toward him. He had watched a small animal stand up against something that should have been impossible to fight. Solomon did not ask questions while he drove. He just focused on the road, his hands tight on the steering wheel, his jaw set hard. Thabo knew his uncle was scared too. Solomon had seen the figures in the headlights. He had seen enough to know that something very strange had happened in that clearing. They reached the ranger station in less than 20 minutes. It was a small building made of concrete blocks, with a radio tower on the roof and a few trucks parked outside. The lights were on inside. Some rangers worked night shifts, watching for poachers and monitoring the animals in the park. Solomon stopped the truck and turned off the engine. He sat there for a moment, breathing hard. Then he looked at Thabo. "Tell me what happened," he said. "Tell me everything." So Thabo told him. He started from the beginning, from when he saw the light in the sky. He described how it came down without making any sound. He described the figures, their strange bodies and shiny skin. He described the way he could not move, the way his voice would not work. And he described the honey badger, how it appeared from the bush and stood between him and the figures. Solomon listened without interrupting. His face went through many expressions as Thabo talked. Confusion, fear, disbelief. But when Thabo finished, Solomon did not say he was lying. He did not say Thabo had imagined it. He just nodded slowly. "We need to go back," Solomon said. "We need to see if there is any evidence, any proof of what happened." Thabo did not want to go back. The thought of returning to that clearing made his stomach hurt. But he also knew his uncle was right. If there was proof, they needed to find it. Otherwise, no one would ever believe them. They went inside the ranger station first. 2 other rangers were there, a man named Peter and a woman named Grace. Solomon told them a short version of what had happened. He did not mention aliens or beings from another world. He just said they had seen something strange, some kind of aircraft that landed in the bush. He said they needed to investigate. Peter and Grace agreed to come with them. They got flashlights and a camera. They got into one of the station's trucks and followed Solomon back toward the campsite. The drive felt longer this time. Thabo watched the darkness outside the window, half expecting to see lights in the sky again. But the sky was quiet, just stars and the half-moon, looking exactly like it had before everything changed. They reached the campsite just before midnight. Solomon parked the truck and turned on all the lights. The clearing looked different now, but Thabo recognized it immediately. This was where the figures had stood. This was where the honey badger had fought. The 4 of them got out of the trucks and walked into the clearing. Peter and Grace were holding their flashlights, moving the beams across the ground. Solomon stayed close to Thabo, one hand on the boy's shoulder. "There," Thabo said, pointing. "That is where the thing landed. Behind those trees." They walked toward the acacia trees. As they got closer, Thabo saw that something was different about the ground. The grass was burned. Not burned black, but a strange golden-brown color, like it had been cooked from the inside. The burned area was shaped like a circle, maybe 20 meters across. Grace kneeled down and touched the grass. "It is warm," she said. "The ground is warm." Peter took pictures with the camera. The flash lit up the clearing again and again. Solomon walked around the edge of the burned circle, looking for anything else unusual. "Here," he called out. "Come look at this." They gathered around him. On the ground, at the edge of the burned area, there was a small pool of something dark and shiny. It looked like liquid metal. When Peter shined his flashlight on it, the liquid seemed to move away from the light. "What is that?" Grace asked. No one had an answer. They searched the area for another hour. They found more burned grass. They found strange marks in the dirt that did not match any animal tracks they knew. They found another pool of the metallic liquid near where Thabo had been kneeling, but they did not find the figures. They did not find the aircraft. Whatever had landed there was gone, disappeared back into the sky while Thabo and Solomon were driving to the ranger station. Finally, Solomon said they had seen enough. They would come back in the morning with more people and better equipment. For now, they needed to get Thabo somewhere safe. As they walked back to the trucks, Thabo saw something at the edge of the clearing. A small shape sitting in the shadows of the bush. Two eyes reflected the flashlight beams. Glowing in the darkness. It was the honey badger. Thabo stopped walking. He stared at the animal, and the animal stared back. It was sitting calmly, like it was waiting for something. Or maybe like it was making sure Thabo was okay. "Uncle," Thabo said quietly. "Look." Solomon turned and saw the honey badger. His eyes went wide. "That is the animal you told me about? The one that fought those things?" Thabo nodded. The honey badger did not move. It just sat there, watching them with its small, fierce eyes. Thabo could see now that it had a wound on its front leg, probably from the fight. But it did not seem bothered by the injury. It just looked at Thabo like it was saying goodbye. "Thank you," Thabo whispered. He did not know if the animal could understand him. He did not know if animals could understand words at all. But he needed to say it. He needed the honey badger to know that he was grateful. The honey badger made a small sound, something between a grunt and a chirp. Then it turned around and walked into the bush, disappearing into the darkness like it had never been there at all. Thabo watched until he could not see it anymore. His eyes were wet with tears, but he did not know why. Maybe it was relief. Maybe it was sadness. Maybe it was something bigger than both of those things. Solomon put his arm around Thabo's shoulders. "Come on," he said gently. "Let us go home." They drove back to Mopani in silence. Thabo leaned his head against the window and watched the bush pass by. He thought about the honey badger, alone out there in the darkness. He thought about how brave it had been, how it had fought without any hope of winning, how it had saved him anyway. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know if people would believe his story. He did not know if the figures would ever come back. But he knew one thing for certain. He would never forget what he had seen that night. He would never forget the honey badger that stepped up and dared them all. That animal had changed his life. And somehow, Thabo knew that his life would never be the same again. The months that followed were strange for Thabo. His story spread through Mopani like fire through dry grass. At first, only a few people knew. His mother, his grandmother, a few of Solomon's friends at the ranger station. But stories have a way of traveling, especially stories as unusual as this one. By the end of the first week, people were coming to Thabo's house to ask questions. Some were neighbors who wanted to hear the story for themselves. Some were journalists from newspapers in Johannesburg and Cape Town. Some were researchers from universities who studied strange events and unexplained sightings. Thabo told his story the same way every time. He did not add details to make it more exciting. He did not leave things out to make it more believable. He just told the truth about what he had seen. The lights, the figures, the honey badger, everything. Some people believed him. They looked at his face and saw that he was not lying. They heard the way his voice shook when he talked about the figures walking toward him. They saw the evidence that Solomon and the other rangers had collected from the clearing. The burned grass, the strange metallic liquid, the tracks that matched nothing in their books. But many people did not believe him. They laughed and said he had been dreaming. They said he had watched too many movies. They said the burned grass was from a lightning strike, and the metallic liquid was just some chemicals spilled by poachers. They had explanations for everything, even when the explanations did not make sense. Thabo learned not to care what the disbeliever said. He knew what he had seen. Solomon knew. The other rangers knew. That was enough. Thought his grandmother was the one who helped him understand what had happened. She was an old woman with gray hair and deep wrinkles around her eyes. She had grown up in the bush, in the old ways, before the towns and the roads and the modern world came. She knew stories that most people had forgotten. One evening, she sat with Thurbo on the porch of their house. The sun was going down, painting the sky orange and red. She held his hand in hers and spoke softly. "The animal you saw," she said. "The Radel. We call it Insul in our language. It means the fearless one. Our ancestors believed that the Insul carried a special spirit. A spirit that cannot be broken. A spirit that will fight any enemy, no matter how strong." Thabo listened carefully. His grandmother did not often talk about the old beliefs. She said most people did not want to hear them anymore. "Some of our ancestors believed that the Insul was a guardian," she continued. "They believed that when a person was in great danger, the spirit of the Insul would come to protect them. Not always in the body of a Radel, sometimes in other forms. But the spirit was always the same, fearless, relentless, willing to fight against anything." Thabo thought about this. He thought about the honey badger standing between him and the figures. He thought about how it had attacked without hesitation, how it had refused to run away even when it was outnumbered. "Do you think that is what happened to me?" he asked. "Do you think the honey badger was sent to protect me?" His grandmother smiled. It was a gentle smile, full of love and wisdom. "I think the spirit of courage lives in many places," she said. "In the hearts of animals, in the hearts of people. Maybe that honey badger was just hunting in the bush when it saw you in trouble. Maybe it attacked the beings, because that is what honey badgers do. They fight. They protect their territory." She squeezed his hand. "Or maybe the spirits of our ancestors sent it to save a boy who needed saving. I cannot tell you which is true, but I can tell you this. You are alive because of that animal. Whatever the reason, whatever the explanation, you were given a gift that night. Do not waste it." Thabo did not waste it. As he grew older, he never forgot what happened in the clearing. He never forgot the honey badger that stepped up when no one else could. The memory stayed with him like a flame that never went out, warming him on cold nights and giving him courage when he was afraid. He finished school at the top of his class. He went to university in Pretoria to study wildlife conservation. He learned about animals, about ecosystems, about how to protect the wild places of Africa from the threats they faced: deforestation, poaching, climate change, habitat destruction. When he was 25 years old, Thabo returned to the Kruger area. He got a job at a wildlife reserve not far from where his uncle Solomon still worked as a ranger. He spent his days tracking animals, studying their behavior, and teaching visitors about the importance of conservation. He never saw the figures again. Sometimes, late at night, he would look up at the sky and wonder where they had come from. He would wonder why they had visited that clearing in the bush. He would wonder if they had ever returned to Earth, somewhere else, where no honey badger was there to stop them. But he did see honey badgers. He saw them often, actually. They were common in the bush, though most people never noticed them. They were small, and they moved at night, and they avoided humans when they could. Every time Thabo saw one, he stopped what he was doing and watched. He watched the way they moved, confident and unafraid. He watched the way they held their ground when larger animals approached. He watched the fire in their small eyes, and every time he remembered. One day, when Thabo was 30 years old, a young boy visited the reserve with his school group. The boy was about 12, the same age Thabo had been on that night long ago. He was thin and curious and asked too many questions. The boy found Thabo near the watering hole and started talking to him. He wanted to know about the animals. He wanted to know about the bush. He wanted to know what it was like to work with wildlife every day. Thabo answered all his questions patiently. Then the boy asked something unexpected. "What is your favorite animal?" Thabo did not hesitate. "The honey badger," he said. The boy looked surprised. "Really? It is so small. Why not a lion or an elephant?" Thabo smiled. He looked out at the bush, at the trees and the grass and the endless African sky. He thought about a night many years ago when he had been a scared boy kneeling in a clearing, waiting for something terrible to happen. "Because the honey badger taught me something important," Thabo said. "It taught me that courage is not about being big or strong. It is about standing up when you need to stand up. It is about fighting for what matters, even when you are afraid, even when you cannot win." The boy was quiet for a moment, thinking about this. "The honey badger does not know if it can win," Thabo continued. "It does not calculate the odds or measure its enemy. It just sees something that needs to be fought, and it fights. That is real courage. That is what I try to remember every day." The boy nodded slowly. Thabo would see that the words had meant something to him. Maybe someday, when the boy faced his own challenges, he would remember this conversation. He would remember the honey badger. That evening, after the school group had left, Thabo walked to the edge of the reserve. The sun was setting, just like it had on the night when everything changed. The sky was orange and red and gold. A movement in the bush caught his eye. A small shape, low to the ground, walking through the grass with perfect confidence. A honey badger had stopped and looked at Thabo. For a moment, they just stood there, watching each other. The man and the animal. The boy who had been saved and the creature that had saved him. Thabo did not know if this was the same honey badger from all those years ago. It probably was not. Honey badgers did not live that long. But it did not matter. The spirit was the same. The fearlessness was the same. The lesson was the same. He raised his hand in a small wave. "Thank you," he said quietly, just like he had said on that night long ago. The honey badger made a small sound. Then it turned and disappeared into the bush, vanishing into the gathering darkness like it had never been there at all. Thabo watched until he could not see it anymore. Then he smiled and walked back toward the lodge. He had work to do tomorrow. Animals to protect, stories to tell, and a debt to repay, one day at a time, to a small creature that had once dared to fight the impossible and won.